Hello everyone, Forest Focus has Nottingham Forest secure European football for the first time in almost 30 years. But do it on a day when everyone was left disappointed by the failure to beat Leicester City, including the owner who ended up on the pitch after the final whistle. Joining to discuss the state of play and how we're all feeling, first of all, is Michael Temple. Temps, afternoon, how are you?
I'm good. The cricketers saved the sporting weekend, didn't they? Got myself to Leigh Wood, struggled. Forest, struggled. Not top of the county championship. But yeah, that Forest result will stay with me for a while.
I'll ask Fletcher about Leigh Wood in one moment, actually. Darren Fletcher, how are you?
Very good, thank you. Thank you, Temps, for saving the weekend. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I'll ask Fletcher now about Leigh Wood. We'll get into it, but I don't want to let it go.
Yeah.
I'm not a boxing fan, but what did you make of it, and where does Leigh go next, out of curiosity?
Well, I don't know where he goes next, but I mean, on reflection, it was always going to be a tough fight for him. I commentated the night that Anthony Kakachi beat Joe Cordina to win the world title in Saudi Arabia, and he was outstanding. And Anthony's a good fighter, and it felt like a difficult fight for the first one back after so long out, and it proved to be that way. So a lot of people at ringside were favouring Anthony Kakachi before. I think a fully fit and sharp Leigh Wood gives him a better fight, but I certainly thought there was enough left in the tank if Leigh wants to carry on. But I think he's got to be careful about the opponents he chooses. And it just felt to me on the night like it was just a step too far after such a long absence out of the ring. You could see what he wanted to do. The mind was telling him what to do, but the body couldn't quite deliver at certain times. So I think it's time for a period of reflection, and then he'll decide what he does. But Anthony Kakachi is a good champion and fought a really good fight on the night. So well done to him.
Perhaps the mind was telling a few Forest players like they wanted to do, the body wasn't doing it, which leads into yesterday. Temps, funny one. We did a post-match show. I was really disappointed we couldn't beat Leicester, and then you wake up this morning and I'm feeling like differently, that it's fantastic we're in Europe, it's a great achievement. Real mixed emotions, probably the kind you get as a Forest fan. How are you feeling today?
I'm a bit down about it because of where we found ourselves pre-Villa. The run since then hasn't been true to the form that we showed in the earlier parts of the season. I genuinely thought that we'd beat Leicester. When we went 2-1 up, I thought we'd play the game out and see that result home, but wasn't to be. And there are reasons for it. I think we can see physical tiredness. I think we probably can see a bit of fatigue upstairs as well. But you have to have a game plan to shut down a game that you find yourselves 2-1 up in it when you need 3 points by any means. And we didn't effectively do that. So I feel for the boys. They've outperformed themselves all season, and we're just finding ourselves wanting in these final furlongs. And I fear that might be the story of the season in terms of Champions League qualification. But we have to reflect on a brilliant season back in Europe after 30 years, and that should be such a positive. But because of the manner in which we overachieved for so long, I think me and others just dreamed of that a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, Pledge, I'm stealing this off someone on Twitter. It was a good point. If you rearrange our results and you come to the same points tally in this stage of the season, you're probably feeling totally different. So it's just the way things have gone recently is just not what we wanted at all. But how are you feeling about it? How are you feeling about the next two games before we get into it properly?
I don't think I'm feeling that disappointed, if I'm honest. I think where Forest are in the table now is a fairer reflection of their standing in the Premier League this season. I think to be third for so long was fine, but I'm not necessarily sure that over the full 36-game period, they've been the third best team in the league. League tables, managers have said for a long time, you are where you're supposed to be in general. And I think it's levelled off to where Forest should be, which is still an unbelievable season. I mean, as they sit now, they're 30 points with 2 games left, better than their 38-game total from last season. And if you look at the stresses and strains that's got on the squad, 8 players have started at least 29 of the 36 Premier League games. 8 players. 11 players have played at least 30 Premier League games. Now, you compare that to everybody else, and there will be people who say, well, think about the old days when they played X, Y, and Z. The game's different now. And if you look at the teams around them, that's not the case. And that's the difference. That's why they can finish stronger than this group can. And you think about January, Aston Villa brought in Marcus Rashford, Donyell Marlon, Marco Asensio. They've either played in a Champions League final or played in a major national tournament final for their country. You look at Manchester City, Kusanov, Marmoush, Victor Hayes, Nico Gonzalez, all came in January. Chelsea have spent over $1 billion. And that's discounting Liverpool and Arsenal. Yet we're now saying, are we disappointed that Forest aren't going to play in the Champions League? It's the most difficult competition to play in. It's one of the most difficult competitions to qualify for. And the reality of the situation is that this Forest team has delivered above and beyond anything that anybody expected. Me as a Forest fan today, I'm happy that I'm going to see the team play in Europe for the first time in 30 odd years or almost 30 years. I was there the last time they played. I was there for both legs against Bayern Munich, and I'm looking forward to seeing them again. If that's the Conference League, great. If it's the Europa League, great. And if it's the Champions League, which is still a possibility, by the way, everybody's speaking as though it's gone, even better. But the fact they're in Europe indicates what a great season they've had and what a building block it gives the owner and the recruitment team now going into the summer to say, right, okay, now we can target a different standard of player. We're a European club. The next phase of the development for the team now is set. So if you put it in a vacuum, yeah, it's a disappointing 90 minutes. If you look at it over 36 games, it's magnificent, whichever way you look at it.
What chance do you give us of getting in the Champions League out of curiosity, Fletcher?
Well, I give them a chance. And that's all you can ask for at this stage. You want to have a chance with 2 games to go. You know, Newcastle have got to go to Arsenal. If Newcastle lose at Arsenal and Forest win at West Ham, then you're going into the final weekend of the season and you've got a chance to qualify because you're going to play Chelsea. Chelsea are going to play the last 2 games without a centre forward. Nicholas Jackson's suspended. They've fallen out with Nkunku. Didn't look really like scoring at Newcastle yesterday. Once Jackson went off, didn't really look like scoring when he was on. But there's the possibility still. So I think it's easy to be disappointed because people dream, and then it feels disappointing when it gets to this stage. But there are 2 games left. The Forest needs 6 points, and to get the 6 points, they've got to play a whole lot better, and they know that. But they still have an opportunity with 2 games to play in the Champions League next season. And while that opportunity exists, then there needs to be positivity around it.
I suppose, is it because it's Leicester, Temps, it feels puts the big slant on it. Leicester are terrible, and I'll maintain that, even though they didn't beat us. We've slid away of late, certainly the last 3 home games, but this was the icing on the cake that made it a bit more painful and has dented people's belief of top 5 football a lot.
Just felt like a home banker, didn't it? Whenever we were looking at the run-in, this was one of the games that we all put 3 points against. So yeah, disappointing from that perspective. I think in isolation, as a single game of football, treating it like the cup final that Morgan Gibbs-White described, we should be beating Leicester. But I don't think fans are attaching blame to the players. They can see that we are 15 to 20 points beyond what a par total would have been considered at the start of the season. But for a long time, it looked like we might be 30 points beyond par, and that would have guaranteed a Champions League spot. So I think that's where this kind of wave of disappointment comes from. But in the same way,
can I ask you about beyond par? Because you can only compare Forest this season to last. You can't compare them to what, in your mind, is an okay points tally. They're 30 points better after 36 games than they were after 38 last year. I don't know what we consider par to be, because last season's team would have found it hard to get to par, let alone get past par. So I find this whole disappointment of where I find it difficult to get my head around, because they're not out of the Champions League yet. They're in Europe. Everything's positive apart from yesterday and the last 3 games at home. But if you go through the course of the season, if we want to kind of identify results, they've also won games that they probably shouldn't have won away from home earlier in the season. But we're not using that now and saying, well, it's an inflated position because they shouldn't have won that. We're just taking those as a great performance. But now we're picking out the disappointing ones and saying, and that's the reason why they're not in the Champions League. But there's been surprisingly positive wins as well as surprisingly negative games where they. But that, as you know, in professional sport, that's why they play the games. That's the legacy of a 38-game season, that it doesn't always go the way it should. And I'd also make the point too that Leicester played without pressure yesterday. Forest played with pressure yesterday. And I would hazard a guess that Southampton are slightly worse than Leicester in the Premier League this season, but they got a draw with Manchester City. So the same thing happened for a relegated team to find a bit more against a Champions League contender. when they got nothing to play for. So it's not only Forest this weekend that's walked into one of those. You know, another side has as well in Manchester City, which I think is as surprising, if not more surprising, than what happened to Forest yesterday. So I'm just this par thing bothers me a touch, because for me, par is what they got last year, and then we compare the improvement based on that.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, beating Man City at home, even beating Liverpool away, like watching those games back, we were second best for long periods and found a way to win. Spurs, we found a way to win. But I think when we walked out of Man United, having beaten them at the City ground, 8-game cushion from 6th with those games to play, I think at that point we considered ourselves to be right in that mix, the top 5, firmly embedded in the top 5. And the manner in which we faded since then has been as a result of those statistical things that you rationalised earlier on. A small group of players, which Nuno likes, being dependent upon with a layer of pressure that they've never experienced before. So I understand it. I can rationalise it. But yeah, I did feel at that point, walking out of the Man United game, that we were firmly entrenched in those top 5 spots.
I want to unravel, pick up why it's fallen away. I was thinking about this last night, probably since the Man City game was the last time I thought we really played well. But just before that, before we go into break, I want to talk about the owner going on the pitch and get the chap's take on it, because it's what is all over the wider media and all over Forest Twitter. What did you make of it, Fletch? What we saw at the end?
Well, first and foremost, the notion that was uttered yesterday on the television that Nuno should now go and find the owner and tender his resignation and discuss his settlement package, I thought was absolutely absurd. First and foremost, it's wrong. The owner's business like that should be done behind closed doors. And I think if you would have given him half an hour to rationalise, he would say exactly the same thing. But he's a very passionate man. He's a very ambitious man. And the club's season really mirrors the owner in many, many ways. The club's identity mirrors the owner in many ways. And you won't change him, I don't think. You know, I think this is part and parcel of having Evangelos Marinakis as your owner, that he's passionate about what he does, finds it very difficult to hide his emotions, whether that is in a positive sense or a negative sense. I would say again that he shouldn't have got on the pitch and had the conversation with Nuno in the full glare of everybody else on the field at full time, but he did. But I don't think in any way that's going to be detrimental to either Nuno's relationship with him, Nuno's longevity at the football club. I don't think it's going to affect things. And I think to suggest that the manager should resign and try and get a payoff based on that yesterday is one of the most absurd things I've heard all season.
What about you, Temps?
These kind of passionate disagreements happen in every single sports club after every single game. It's part of a healthy environment in which everybody wants to win, and it's magnified by what's at stake in Premier League matches. We've got a brilliant owner who's given us the financial backing, who's got the machinery that can pick a player, and his downside is he shoots from the hip, comes on the pitch a bit and sends the odd tweet. But no one has transformed our football club in quite this manner since Brian Clough. And the consistent character in the rebuild of Forest has been the ownership group, with a succession of managers and an evolving group of players. I didn't like it. I think that the way that this disagreement between the coaching staff and the medical staff has been described hangs people out unfairly. I don't think that it's good for the perception of our club when these kind of heated discussions take place on the pitch. But that would have been a totally normal thing to happen in the manager's office after a match, and that's why I wish it had stayed.
I also think that situation bears more scrutiny than the owner having a pop at the manager on the pitch. That breakdown in communication at such a critical time in such a critical game is, I'm sure, Nuno's concern, rather than the spat he's had with his owner on the field after. I think they will have had meetings today to work out why that communication broke down, why the wrong information was given, because that's critical stuff at a critical stage. And Nuno would have expected more, I'm sure, from his medical team if the wrong information was given. And I think that will have been more of the focus today, to make sure that that doesn't happen again, so that Forest have got 11 fit players on the pitch when it really matters, than anything that might have happened to impact things at full time. So I think that's where the lesson will be learned. And I'm pretty sure the other bit will have been forgotten about pretty swiftly after the match, because they've got bigger things to worry about at this stage, namely West Ham away and Chelsea at home, and how they're going to play better in those two matches compared to what they've been doing in the last few.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think I agree. I don't want the owner going on the pitch and having those conversations in front of everyone. Also, Nuno can't answer those questions. Like Fletcher says, you probably need a debrief to find out what went wrong, and those are the kind of conversations that will take place. So, and it puts Nuno in a tricky spot with the media, but Nuno handled it very well. He's a real master in this situation, and he's very good at managing up, I think. And his relationship with the owner, it seems a really good one. So,
Matt, you need to say, there's a lot of marriages, mine included, where if there's one hothead in the house, it's me. And if there's one calming influence in the house, it's my wife. And we go together quite well. And I think in managerial terms, Nuno is the perfect foil for Mr. Marinakis, because Mr. Marinakis wears his heart on his sleeve and he says what he thinks. And it's the great point that Temps made, he shoots from the hip. That's a great way to describe him. And then you've got Mr. Calm, cool and collected, very, very considerate. He'll think about everything. He'll give you a considered response. And you often find that while somebody would like to try and pour oil on the flames, Nuno's very much a calming influence, and he's pouring more water on them to try and put them out. So I think together they make a very good team. And I think he's the kind of manager that the owner needs to make sure that there is utopia in there rather than constant friction. So I would think Nuno's personality in this case is very, very important, and in general for the dynamic between the owner and the manager. So I think he's picked well. I think Nuno knows exactly how to handle those kind of situations.
And Fletcher's Marinakis in this, and Lauren is Nuno. Just in case someone out there wondering.
Although Temps, I get a clip round the ear and be told to shut up rather swiftly by Mitchell.
Yeah, he certainly couldn't be football married to Mourinho or Guardiola or anything like that. I think that is not a recipe that would work. But this is one that could work, and Nuno's taken us to great heights. And we'll pick up a few more things shortly. But just before that, a reminder that you get down the trend now. Starting tonight, actually, there's playoffs, the EFL playoffs. They do still exist. We've forgotten about them now. But it's double stamps on your loyalty card. You can watch Bristol City v Sheffield United in the Championship playoffs tonight. If you get 3 pints, you'll get 6 stamps, and your next drink is free. And also, just another quick one to flag for people, there's an end of season party, and it should be a party because it's been a great season, after the Chelsea game with the Fun Boy 2. Free entry, get there early. So huge queues at the weekend to get to the NAB because it is so popular. So do enjoy that one. Right, where shall we start next? Let's just on Taiwo. Have we seen the last of him, sadly, Temps, in a Forest shirt now with the injury, do you think?
I just wonder if part of that debate was maybe they could have had a chance to move on, is the wrong word, but to recruit back up for that position in January. We chose not to. We chose to keep the squad together, and it felt like the right thing at the time. And I think we were all applauding it. You had a group of players who were overperforming, who were tightened together. Those that weren't necessarily in the 11 were still contributing, and there were flashes that Taiwo could be the backup that we needed, but he hasn't got himself back to the levels that we saw in the first season when he was a major reason in his retaining our Premier League status. I don't think he'll be at the club next season, but he's still got a role to play in these next 2 games potentially. So yeah, don't want to deride what Taiwo has done for the club, but I would fully expect us to recruit to that position in the summer.
What are you expecting over the summer, Fletch? We're going to be in Europe. We're going to need significant business, significant strengthening. I assume we're expecting a very busy summer, aren't we?
Yeah, you'd suspect so. And I think they're going to be buying from a position of strength, certainly stronger than they were last season. As a European club, you can attract different players. People are going to look at the trajectory of the club, and they're going to see that it's one that's getting better season on season. They're going to see the ambition of the owner, and they're going to see, that what kind of club it is to play for when you walk out, the atmosphere, the supporters, the feeling that you get. So there's going to be a lot of reasons why you'd want to sign for Forest. I also think as well, just kind of going back to January, that it is easy as a club to go in there and say, well, let's buy 3 or 4 then and just stick them in and away you go. But I don't know what that does for your overall long-term build. I think they've got something special here, that they've got a team that's probably greater than the sum of its parts right now. And maybe they want to be a little bit more precise in how they add to that and make sure that they put the right pieces in rather than knee-jerk pieces in January to try and chase a dream, because maybe they think that they can put something together that can be sustainable. I know that the feeling in there, certainly in the owner's mind, is that he wants the team in this position season on season. He doesn't see this as a one-season shot to get into the Champions League. The plan is to make the ground bigger, to make the squad better, to put Forest in the window of challenging for Champions League places and trophies season upon season. So I think as the overall build goes, there'll be a distinct strategy for it. They're going to want to get better players in certain positions. And I think they're also going to want better players around the squad. Temps made the point that Nuno likes smaller numbers than certain managers. I would completely agree with that. But I think if you give him 18 or 19 players of a similar quality, rather than 13 or 14 of a certain quality and then a drop off to the rest, it makes his decisions easier in big moments in games. So I think quality and depth is essential. Certain positions need to get stronger, but I think they'll have a really distinct and solid strategy about how they want to do that, based on keeping the club in this kind of situation next season, trying to improve on it again, and going down that route rather than seeing this as a one-off and, oh, we were nearly there. They're going to try and do this next year as well. And that will be the strategy for the summer, I'm sure.
When we think about Europe then, Temps, I'm going to sound a bit like, you've asked a girl out and she said, oh, no, and you've gone, I didn't really want you to go out with me anyway. But is the Champions League... That never happened to you, obviously. But is the Champions League maybe a step too far in terms of we're not ready for it? I know Villa went into the Conference League and then went into the Champions League and married the two quite well, Conference League and Premier League, to get top four. Is some form of European football actually a really good step in our development, or was it Champions League or bust because of who you can buy?
Who cares if you're not good enough for the Champions League? You spend 4 days getting excited about facing Madrid before they beat you 6-0, don't you? I just think I just take so much from that and that moment, standing in the City ground, listening to that music. Like, of course I want it, and I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't slightly disappointed that there's now less likelihood of us getting it. But you have to evolve. And my preseason prediction that we could improve by 10 to 12 points would have been something that I would have been immensely proud of if we weren't in that bottom end scrap at this stage of the season, looking over our shoulder. So in terms of the evolution of the football club, everything that you and Fletcher have said stands. We're going to have more money. We're going to be able to demonstrate through PSR that we can pay bigger transfer fees, better wages. We can attract that type of player. But what we have done almost accidentally is signed 2 or 3 Champions League level players. I'd include the centre halves in that. I'd include Morgan Gibbs-White in that. I think Matt Sells, Olarina could be accomplished footballers at that level. So we now have a challenge of keeping them happy and interested at a time when other clubs will examine what's made Forest as good as they've been this season and try to part us from some of our prized assets. So look, I am excited. I'd love the Europa League, but there's no point dressing it up. I think people can hear in my tone and my answers to today that I do think we've fallen off a level from where we were 5 and 6 weeks ago, and it's disappointed me. It's disappointed several fans, but we'll get over it and we'll come again next season and make a good account of ourselves. But revolving door, I think there's going to be some big moves for strikers in particular in Europe this year. I wonder what Arsenal are going to do. I wonder what Isaac's future is going to be, and I wonder what the knock-on effect of that merry-go-round will be. But we're not going to be passive in the transfer market, are we? There's going to be a lot of changes somewhere. I just hope we get those major decisions right, because competing on the European front does have the potential to detrimentally impact your league form, as we've seen from Man United and Spurs, who've prospered in Europe, but have really, really struggled on the domestic front. So need to rebalance the squad, need some quality, and they need some numbers in quickly.
Sems, you know this, and from your experience at the cricket club, if you could write down the ideal way to build a winning team, the championship team, you would do it in stages, and you'd forget about any of the outside noise, and you'd want to do it in blocks. And you'd want to say, right, we start from 0, and then we do a bit, we gradually add to it. And you'd have an idea in your mind where you think you'd be ready to then win. And that would be the season where the pressure would be on. Forest have gone from 4th bottom. Now, they might have gone straight into 3rd place in the Premier League and the Champions League. And I think that's a real challenge for them, because they would probably need maybe even 10 players of a certain standard in the summer, which is virtually impossible, to put a team together that could play in the Champions League and not feel the pinch. in the Premier League. I think if they play Conference League football, I'd make them favourites to win it. If they play Europa League football, I'd make them a strong selection to get really deep in the competition, just based on what Chelsea, Manchester United and Tottenham have done this season. I mean, they're so far in front of everybody else in the competition. You know, the fourth best team in Spain in the semi-final ended up going out 7-1 to Man United on aggregate. And they're, I mean, had it not been for the three teams that came up, they'd be at the bottom. So these are teams that are floundering in the Premier League, yet they're into a European final. And there's no reason why Forest can't do that next season. And it also means that if they did miss on the Champions League, and again, I'll reiterate, still possible that they could be in it, to get yourself ready for a Europa League campaign or a Conference League campaign and an improved Premier League season is the next stage. The Champions League is a few stages beyond that, and you'd have to rush it. So I think in team building situations like this, it might actually benefit them in the end. We could get to this stage of next season where everybody's looking forward to going to wherever the European final is that Forest have actually got into, which would be so exciting for the city, so exciting for the fan base. And that's a distinct possibility if the team play either Conference League or Europa League, and it's going to be one of them. Why would they not go deep in that competition with a decent summer? I think they go deep in that competition with what they've got now, based on this season's results. So I think it could be a really exciting European season next season with a few good additions and this group kept together under this manager, because I think this football translates brilliantly into European football. 2 legs, league phase, they'll be fine. 2 legs after that, brilliant. So I'd be really excited and think there'd be a real possibility to win one of them, let alone just be in it and enjoy it for the first time in 30 years. They could win it, which imagine that, eh? Imagine that. I don't think anybody would be disappointed then. They might be disappointed now, but they wouldn't be disappointed then, surely.
Let's talk more about the game yesterday in general then. There were some big positives, and we probably should start with one. Chris Wood, 20 goals. It did go under the radar again a bit, Temps, because disappointed not winning. But to have a striker scoring 20 Premier League goals when I think he's missed 4 games, and he's probably been off the boil a bit lately as well. It's a mad achievement that we can't ignore.
Having watched him as we have since his signing, he just deserves so much more respect on his name. I think if you casually watch some of his Burnley highlights and you think he's a bit of a battering ram or scores backstick headers, whatever else, he really doesn't. Alive in the box, improvise as well. Good finisher with both feet, physical presence. And the fact that he's scored 20 goals in a Premier League season for Nottingham Forest, I think, has put him into folklore. He's got every chance of joining that 100 club now, hasn't he? I think next season is his opportunity to become one of an elite band of strikers that have scored 100 goals in the Premier League. One of the big reasons why we have won those games against the Head earlier in the season, I think he's been an excellent acquisition for Forest. And I myself was wrong with the take that I made when we first signed him. So much more respect now for Chris Wood, having watched him as closely as we have. And his trademark finish from Morgan Gibbs White Cross at the weekend was one of several great moments this season.
What do you make of the Morgan situation, Fletch? Good goal, another assist, what we've been crying out for, a pointed celebration with the noise thing in his ears. What's your take on the whole Morgan situation?
Look, I think he's a super talented player. I think he brings so much to the team. But I think once you are classed as your team's best player and you're in an England squad, I think then you're the player that everybody looks at to drag them through difficult situations. You know, you're supposed to be the one that makes a goal or scores a goal when it's needed because you're the best player. And if he stays this summer, then that's something that he has to do more of next season, because he's got to keep improving season upon season. He's not the finished article yet. He's not as good as he can be. And if he does go to a club like Manchester City, then that harsh reality is going to set in that if he doesn't do that, then he wouldn't be in the team. But I think he's been such an important part of what Forest have done this season. I often say that his enthusiasm for the game from that position means that he almost covers 2 positions for you, which I think is really important. But I still think he could score more goals, and I still think he could make more goals. And I think if you sat him down and gave him a lie detector test, he'd tell you he'd feel the same, because he knows he can still improve. But again, you know, this has almost been Morgan's coming out party as a Premier League player. Now everybody knows about him. So now his challenge is, can you be better next season? And this is the challenge for the entire Forest group. You've now come out and shown that you're one of the top 6 or 7 sides in the best league in Europe, the world. Now, can you do it again next year? Can you be better next year? This is the challenge for all of them. Elliot Anderson, Murillo, Nikola Milenkovic, every one of them. So, you know, we must remember that this is not a one and done situation. This is an evolving football team and an evolving football club. And everything I hear from people inside the club is that everything is geared to make this club bigger, better, more successful. And they see this season internally as a taste of what's to come. This is what they want to be year on year. So I don't think too many people are that disappointed internally, other than the professional pride of wanting to finish the job. And they've had a few setbacks along the way. But I think as far as the bigger picture is concerned, this has now given everybody the belief that they can crack that top area and be a constant in there for the foreseeable future. And I know that that's the target for everybody down there.
I suppose to do that, Thames, we probably need more depth. I think it's fair to say we've got the 11, we've got the 14. As soon as you take a couple of key players out, it looks certainly different. I mean, Murillo on Sunday, Morato comes in, and I think Fletcher, I think he was saying this before, Morato is impressed at Forest behind the scenes, impressed at training, but then you see him on Sunday and Buonanotte is, he's beaten him way too easily, really. Shouldn't have had that bigger drop-off, should we? Just one change?
No, but, other teams will play on that, won't they? They'll do their analysis. They'll be aware of where our weaknesses, where our make weight is, and how it affects the patterns and behaviours of the team. I think it's obvious where we want more depth. There's a big drop-off with the wingers. We've almost stopped playing that shape since Callum Hudson-Odoi's injury. So I don't think there'd be too much disagreement on where the improvements required. We've got a bit of a stockpile in central midfield, and that mix in there is debated game to game. But outside of that, once you're out of the injuries, you pretty much know who's going to slip on a Forest shirt. So I don't think there'd be too much disagreement between the club, the fans, everybody who's got a view on the club as to where we need to recruit to. I think the harder thing is going to be moving on from certain players. So we take Chris Wood as an example. He's just got 20 goals in the Premier League, but there'd be people out there saying he potentially couldn't lead a line in the Champions League, or it's time to move on and gear up. But is that the case? Is that fair? Would Murillo and Milenkovic have the capability to play a Europa League or Champions League group stage campaign, as well as starting 35 games in the Premier League? You need to have depth in all positions. And unfortunately, this year we've seen the drop off when there've been injuries to Murillo, to Ola Reiner, to Callum Hudson-Odoi, to Chris Wood. But we'll address that this summer. I think you can rest assured there's going to be a bigger group of players in that A cast that Fletch described earlier. Can't be 13, 14, needs to be 18, 19.
And you also have to have a certain standing within the game to be able to carry those players. Good players won't come and sit on the bench of a club unless they feel that it's a good thing to do. They want to be part of a story. They want to be. Look at Manchester United. So they've got Rasmus Højlund right now, and that's it. They've got nobody else to play centre forward. When they were good, think back to '99 in Barcelona. Four starting strikers. They were starting with Solskjaer and Sheringham on the bench, and Cole and York in the team. But Manchester United can't carry those anymore now, because nobody will come and sit on the bench and watch that, because they'll think they should be on the pitch and in the side. So Forest have got to get better before they can carry the depth. And this has been the season where they've done that. So people will now come and buy into the dream and know that they're going to be competing for League Cups, FA Cups, a European trophy, trying to get into so there's going to be games for everybody, big games for everybody. So teams will come and be part of that. And Tempster's point again goes back to the point I made at the start. In January, Aston Villa signed Rashford, Marlon, Asensio. Manchester City signed 4 players. They got deeper at a time where Forest didn't. And we wonder why they finished the season stronger than Forest have. Well, it's not difficult to work out. These players have only got, you stretch elastic so far and eventually it's going to break. And I think we've just got to the point where they've all given everything they possibly can. And let's not forget, they play a brand of football where they work so hard out of possession It's very physically taxing on the squad. If you're a wonderful possession-based team, you can canter through games, keep the ball, play the game at your pace. They've got 10 outfield players every game working like dogs to try and get the ball back and stay in a good defensive shape. And I think all of this over the course of the season has taken its toll. You know, I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I've just seen the way the Premier League's changed. And I just think the way that, being realistic, it would have been a miracle had they been able to do what they did in October, November, December, around there, right the way through until the middle of May. It would have been a miracle, because every injury's been a big one, because it's Ola Aina, it's Chris Wood, it's players that it's Murillo this weekend. They're big players. They're the heartbeat of the team. You lose one of them, and there's such a drop off to the one that comes in. It's difficult to cope with it. So I think that's got to be taken into account as well when you look bigger picture and assess over the piece how well they've done. If we would have sat here in August and said, right, FA Cup semi-final and European football, how many people believe that's going to happen? I think you would have been 10%-ish of the fan base would have said that was possible. The most, Greg would have been one. Greg and his mates, they would have said for sure that's the minimum requirement, because Greg's the most optimistic Forest fan I know. But the most optimistic would have said, yeah, we can do that. But I think the vast majority of the rest would have gone, I don't know about that. We'll be better. So I think when you look at it and sit down over a beer in the summer and look back on it, please don't be disappointed if Forest don't make the Champions League. Be delighted that we're going to see European football next season. We're going to see better players at Forest next season. And Forest have got a chance to be doing this again with maybe even more success next season, because that's what this season has been about. So I really hope that fans look at it that way, rather than be disappointed in any way that they didn't finish third or whatever it is.
We'll clean up a bit more on the game before we go, but before that, a word with Global Telemetrics, another video from them, and it misses off the last word. I'm sorry, but it's a really good video, so we'll see you in 23 seconds.
In April, Global Telemetrics recovered £1.9 million worth of cars.
80% of vehicles recovered this month were stolen from the home addresses, with public car parks accounting for 15% of the remaining recoveries.
The most expensive vehicle this month was a Lamborghini Urus. 65% of our thefts this month were using the keyless method.
Method is the word that was missing at the end there. Check out the link in the description for Global Telemetrics. Thanks for their support, as ever. Right, the other thing I wanted to talk about is... What?
It said method temps at the end.
It said meth, which isn't the word you want to say necessarily.
I got method. Yeah. You need to upgrade your Windows, Matt. You're still on 95, aren't you?
I bought a new laptop at the weekend, so I've got that. I did, yeah. We're investing. We're going upwards now. We're in Europe.
You see? See? There you go. You see?
Yeah, we've all got to move forwards. Right, let's talk a last bit about the game. Nuno's getting a fair bit of hammer attempts for his game management, substitutions, probably for about the fourth game in a row. I suppose my question is he actually doing anything different to what he was doing earlier in the season? We're just getting different outcomes for various reasons. Is it right to throw the blame at Nuno, or is it more complicated than that?
Look, he doesn't take action in the same way that we call upon it, right? So he makes his substitutions generally later than other Premier League managers, and his preference is to try and shut down a game from a winning position. That's been our strength from the bench, right? Bring on Willy Bolly, bring on Morato, last 15, 25 minutes and see it out. Where we struggle is when we're trying to inject another gear into the final 15, 20 minutes to make something happen. And that's been a failing for a couple of reasons. One is the drop-off between the bench wingers in particular and the starting players. And the other is because there's only one striking option beyond Chris Wood. And he's been out of sorts this year, one Premier League goal. So I don't think Nuno's doing anything different to the method that he's used to get us into this position. So I'm not going to give him criticism for those decisions. I think football is easy in hindsight, and it's easy when you're sat in the stands. We probably call for gung-ho football far too quickly and far too often. when sometimes you have to be a bit more pragmatic than that. And I don't think that Nuno deserves any criticism, given that the sum of all of the parts of the body of work he's done this season. So I'll defend the changes that he makes. We're not privy to the knocks that people are carrying, the tiredness or the personal lives or the bits and bobs that are going off. So you've got to back your gaffer on those kinds of decisions. But I think as groups of fans, we do generally call for earlier, more attacking substitutions than the scientists, the computers, the coaches would tell him to.
I think it's like probably it comes back to trusting players, doesn't it? Because you could say I would have liked to have seen Dominguez come off for a winger, maybe at 2-1, try and kill the game off. That's what a lot of people are saying. Ryan Yates comes on. I think the tide had turned in the game, by the way, by then. I thought since they brought Buonanotte and Leicester were the better team. But Nuno is quite conservative in his subs. Does it come down to squad depth again, Fletch, or not?
I just had a...
Has he frozen?
I
think Fletch needs that new laptop as well, Matt.
I know, he's left us on. I just had and it was going to be a call or a text or something good, I think.
Oh, everybody went there.
You're back. You just had a...
You all went. So I've just done a quick counter. Frank Clark left the club in December of 19...
Well, this is unfortunate timing.
I hope he's going to make the point that I would have made about that. Forest are in good shape when a manager starts and ends the season, and it hasn't happened anything like as often as you'd think. It obviously happened with Steve Cooper, and it's happened with Nuno as well, who's managed to kick us on. But for too long, we've looked to blame managers for everything. We've chopped and changed, and just ended up being a place where managers don't want to come. That's not the case now, and that's down from the two guys who've taken us from one gear to the next and that gear to another. And both of those guys will deserve eternal credit for the contribution they've made to our club.
Nobody wants this to be said, but I'm going to get it out there one way or the other. So I've said a quick I'm going to start again. December 1996. This is normally where I start to go. Frank Clark left the club. Whichever way you look at it, throw in your Paul Williamses, Frank Marlowe's, all these people that had a little nibble at it. Anywhere between 26 and 30 plus different people have tried to get Forest back into Europe. Nuno Espirito Santo has achieved that this season. So I, for one, will not be criticising his tactics, his substitutions, the colour of his underpants, the scent of his aftershave, none of it. He's got the team in Europe. Let's just accept it for what it is. He's doing what he thinks is right in those moments. And nobody was having a pop at him when he did all this early in the season and Forest were winning. Forest are going to get better players. When they get better players and more depth, they'll see the season out better than they have this season. But the problems at Forest, if there are any, are certainly not at the manager's door. 1996, December, Frank Clark. Go and look at the rest of them that have all tried and failed. This fella's achieved it. Let's not start picking him apart at this stage of the year.
Some of them fell to out of the bottom of the Championship, Fletch.
Well, I tell you, there was one guy that got out of the bottom of the Championship because he got into League One, so that was decent. They got out that way. They went the wrong way. So this is a great season. This is European football. This is challenging for the Champions League. This is a semi-final. We can't look at everything in a vacuum. Yes, people are disappointed that Leicester got a draw at Forest and that Brentford won. Fine. But this is 36 games with a group of players that have overperformed by 30 points.
Lost him again. Side note, I bet Nuno smells absolutely magnificent. That was my takeaway from what Fletcher was saying there.
Yeah, he's a well-groomed man, isn't he, Nuno? He's braved the shave, which all men should when they get to that point. He's got great facial hair, perfect teeth. Yeah, court hero. I can see why the housewives love him.
Right. If Fletch returns, we shall start to wrap things up. In fact, we shall do that anyway, because we've covered a good lot in 45 minutes there. If you've enjoyed this, do us a favour, hit like, hit subscribe, do consider membership or Patreon, or just give us a lovely 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. Fletch is off to check his Wi-Fi or change suppliers before that. But any final words before that, Fletch, before we go?
No, I can't believe I'm sat here at this stage, 12th of May. Forest are in Europe and people are disappointed. I just cannot get my head around it. We're criticising the manager and all this mad stuff. Come on.
Oh, I have seen people online saying he should be sacked and all that mad stuff. That's
really?
So like 1% of a few tweets and all that. It's only a few.
Really?
A few bits on comments and online and stuff. There's stuff that you'll get with any fan base and anywhere in the world. So I'm not really.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. Now that has shocked me because I thought we were better than that.
Well, that's just like 0.001% of that you get anywhere, I guess. But yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me. We're the way we're going as a football club. Yeah.
I tell you what, if there's anybody that wants this fella sacked at this stage, I have no idea what's going to make people happy. Really.
No, I suppose people are saying, I don't really want to entertain it. People are saying, we're third. Marinakis wanted the Champions League. We've failed, and he can't take us to the next level. Yeah, that would what the argument would be. Yeah, which is mental. I know.
Okay.
I know, it's mad. Temps, any final words from you? You gonna say Nuno should be sacked before we go?
No, Nuno should be rewarded. His contract extended. We're not quite in statue territory yet, but we're going to when we win that Europa League, as Fletcher just got me all excited about. Like I've got my West Ham ticket. I can't wait for these next 2 Sundays. Anything could happen. Some big games elsewhere. So yeah, keep believing, keep dreaming. But even if we don't, I will settle in 2 and 3 weeks' time and just reflect on a magnificent season. Certainly one of the best in my mind. I enjoyed the playoff season. Obviously, I enjoyed the feeling of surviving relegation in the first year back in the Premier League. But this has been a massive kick on. We've embarrassed some so-called bigger clubs up and down the country, and you've got to think that we're being prepared for more days like that, and less days, frankly, than yesterday, where we did find ourselves humbled a little bit off the back of small squad, tired legs, tired minds. But there's no one in the running that football club that doesn't have a method, a plan of how we're going to get ourselves to that next level. And let's hope we continue to go through these years. But Nuno, the players, the club as a whole, have massively overachieved throughout this season. And it's been one that we'll never forget, however it ends over the course of the next 2 Sunday afternoons.
Lovely stuff. Right, we'll leave it there. I think we'll be back probably on Wednesday. I've got a couple of guests lined up, but neither confirmed. But we'll certainly have the usual match preview and opposition preview and post-match show and all that stuff. So do join us for that. But in the meantime, Michael Temple, thank you very much.
Cheers, fellas. Good to see you, Fletch.
Top man, great to see you, Temps. And you, Matt. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Lovely stuff. Have a good day, everyone. If we don't see you tomorrow or Wednesday or whenever it is, we shall see you soon.